Hey, folks, welcome to episode 74 of Tall Tales with Taco Bell. My name is Mitch Bell. I'm your host. And you know what? It's a real pleasure wherever you are listening to this around the world. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Tonight of nights, I've got another Marine on, which it's just going to be a lot of fun. I've got Sergeant Major Charlie Wells, who, if you all are on LinkedIn, I mean, Facebook, face it, is dying, but Facebook is social media interaction. And even though it's become kind of very restrictive, here Zuckerberg does his thing. YouTube is becoming the same way, unfortunately. Then I go over to LinkedIn to get the feel good stuff because it's really more of a professional site, and it's not the get away from the politics and the pettiness of life. It's real professional people doing great professional things. And one of the guys that caught my eye on LinkedIn was Charlie, because Charlie's videos were just fantastic. They literally, the sergeant major sitting there drinking a cup of coffee in front of his house with American flag in the background, and just giving his little nuances on life and his little stories and vignettes. And he's gone from leadership to transitional trading to kind of reworking his brand, just helping. And what I love about it is it's paying it forward. He's helping out other veterans, and that's what I really try to do in a lot of my episodes is highlight people that help out vets, especially Marines. So, without further ado, I'd like to bring Charlie on. Charlie, welcome to the podcast that you made fun of. What do you guys do, man? You got time to have a podcast. Man, I love it. I had to tease you about that.
Well, I tell you, I appreciate you having me. I watched your intro there, and man, I'm about to call my recruiter and see if I can re-up for four more after watching that. And then you come on, and I see that mannequin back there in World War II, utilities. Man, you're just super motivated.
Hey, actually, that I've got two uniforms, and the first uniform is James A. Missioner when he landed on Iwo Jima, and then right behind me, I built that little case with the K bar in it, and that's actual sand from Iwo Jima when I was here for the 50th anniversary, and little trinkets, little things I found. I found one of the band not rifle sling deals. I found a 30-06 shell and a perfect bullet, and
Oh
then I have
wow.
another shell that looked like it uh, cooked off maybe, and so I glued all that stuff in there, and that's kind of thing. And then James A. Missioner's uniforms hanging in my closet, and I had it on the mannequin. Then Freddie Joe Farnsworth is a Marine who got into Hollywood, and that uniform was in the TV show The Pacific. So
Wow.
Freddie Joe gave that to me when I was out there in San Diego in October. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm putting it on my mannequin. Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
hey, I love. First of all, like I said in the intro, you prove servant leadership, and as a senior Marine, you really have shown how much it pays to pay it forward. And I just want to ask how you started making your videos. Uh, how long into the end of your career did you start doing this?
You know, uh, I got on LinkedIn like a lot of people when I went through my transition class the first time, and I did go through twice, and I would recommend that to everybody.
Hmm.
The first time I went through, I heard about this thing called LinkedIn, and I'd heard of it before, but I'd never really dealt with it much. And when I got onto LinkedIn, I started, scrolling the feed after I got my account set up. And one of the first people I ran across was a guy named Matt Quick. And if you know Matt, Matt is a retired soldier uh, by way of the Marine Corps.
I
Like
don't
a
know
lot of
him. No.
soldiers, yeah, he did 4 years in the Corps and then got out and went in the Army and did the rest of his service in the Army, retired as a sergeant major in the Army. And now he really just kind of focuses on, I shouldn't say he focuses only on transition because in reality, even if you weren't a veteran, he could still help you because he's really savvy with HR stuff.
Hmm.
But he was one of the first people I connected with. And he probably doesn't realize it, even though I've told him before. But boy, he helped me out tremendously through my transition. And it wasn't because I didn't know what to do. It wasn't because I was lost. It was because sometimes you need a cheerleader. Sometimes you need somebody to tell you that it's going to be okay. Because
Right.
it's Yogi Berra had that old saying about it being 90% mental. You know, you know how the rest of it goes. But transition really is 90% mental. You really need cheerleaders to tell you that it's going to be okay, and to ask you the hard questions and just have conversations with you. And between him and a guy named Herb Thompson, they were kind of that mental aspect for me. And I actually had a guy that I was going through transition with named Joe Henry. And Joe is just an amazing supporter. He was very empathetic, much more empathetic than most men you'll ever meet. And he was also that source, of wise counsel and that sounding board. I suppose we probably were for each other, but I always said that if I could ever get back the way that Matt and Herb and all these other fellas gave to me when I was going through transition, that I'd really like to do that because, at the end of my life, the book of Hebrews tells us it's appointed for every man wants to die and then the judgment, so if we're all going to die, I think while I'm here, I'm really going to live. And to me, really living means, really giving back to other people because that's how you're remembered. Those folks that you mentioned there, all those World War II vets and all the men and women that served before us, we stand on the shoulders of giants, but we remember them for that. So, those memories will never die because we know what they did for us. I want to be one of those folks. I want to be one of those folks that, is remembered for what he did for his community. And, LinkedIn's a really good tool to do that with because there's never a shortage of veterans to help, even if it's a phone call to just talk to people. And really, most of the people that reach out to me, and I take phone calls all the time, and, people that reach out to me, very seldom do they need anything specific. What they really need is a conversation and a sanity check on things. And, just an amazing opportunity to do it here on LinkedIn. So it's easy to come up with these videos because, as I mentioned earlier, some of them come from experience and some come from just, talking to other people on LinkedIn. Hey, Taco, how am I coming through on your end? Can you hear me? I can't hear you at all. You might be on mute.
Oh my God. That whole thing I'm sitting here talking. Oh my God. You're going, oh crap, man. His podcast. Well, I've never done that before, Sergeant Major.
Hey,
Here we go.
hey, I just didn't want to interrupt you. You look like you was on a roll.
I was on a roll. Golly, man. Okay. So here we go, folks. I'm gonna say this again. If you look at this, here's the Sergeant Major's first show, and he has the Sergeant Major's coffee, and it has a little espresso cup. But then when you look at the video and it goes in, it transitions to this huge Sergeant Major cup. And I love that because it's kind of like the corporate cup, little, your little thumb up to get your espresso, double diet decaf Pepsi espresso, and then you've got the Sergeant Major's cup with the real coffee. But in Texas, we've got a guy named Charlie Zinger, and Charlie is the go-to guy in the Dallas Fort Worth area. In Vietnam, he was a Cobra pilot, came back, became an officer selection officer, and out on one of his deals, he met Ross Perot. And Ross Perot goes, hey, how would you, let me tell you something, son. I went to Naval Academy, right? And I did a lot of things in Naval Academy, but I got to tell you something. I really like the way that you do things and the way you operate. So how would you like to come work for me, son? And he goes, Mr. Perot, I've got like 6 months left on my contract. And he goes, well, when you're done 6 months, then you come work for me. And so he did. He left. He became a headhunter for Ross Perot and spent 25 years working for the gentleman. Then he got
Wow.
out and became a headhunter for executives. So he specializes in taking care of executives. But like you, what I love about Charlie is that if anybody, especially a Marine, anybody needs um, help, they just you send them to Charlie. Charlie will take them to lunch, sit down, and discuss stuff. And actually, I had his advice because my company was on the verge of bankruptcy, and I thought, you know what, I would be remiss if I did not go out and try to look for another job or be proactive in case I got laid off or the company went under. So I called Charlie up and I said, Charlie, I'm the guy asking for help now. I've sent a bunch of people to you, but now I think I need some help. So we sat down at lunch and he goes, bring your laptop. And so I brought the laptop and pulled it up and he goes, now, do you have a LinkedIn account? And I go, yeah, I think I did one of those years ago, but I never get on it. Okay, get on it. And here's why, because send out a message to every single contact you have. And it's like the shampoo commercial where the girl has dandruff. And I told my friends, and then it multiplies and multiplies or whatever. Um, it's a true statement because Charlie Wells may have gone to staff NCO school way back when with the guy who is now the HR guy for Xerox at
Yeah.
Leesburg. And oh, by the way, I'm trying to get a job at Xerox. So who do I know at Xerox? If you guys are ever looking for a job out there, and it's all about networking, and that is what LinkedIn is all about. So join LinkedIn, send out messages to all your friends to connect with you, and then join the different groups that they have, a plethora of groups, right? Would that be your first thing that you would recommend to folks is get on LinkedIn and set up a profile?
It would be. There's a lot of folks, a lot of veterans on LinkedIn, a lot of guys that help folks with transition like I do. They'll tell you that the one thing that you can't do enough of in transition is network. And one of the best tools out there is LinkedIn. But I'll tell you, case in point, I've held two positions since I've been out of the Marine Corps. Both of those positions came through networking. Now, those didn't come through LinkedIn. They came from, actual face-to-face networking. And really, both of those positions were relationships that I cultivated over, several years of actually working with those people so that I was a known quantity to them. So, when it came time for me to transition out, I knew exactly where I was going to work, day one of taking my camis off. And then, later on, this government position where I now work, it came along a little later on, and it was just, an opportunity it was too good to pass up. But both of them came through networking, and I'm certain that the next job I have will also come through networking because it's just, and LinkedIn does that for you.
Yeah. 98, when I got off active duty, there was no LinkedIn, but you're absolutely right. Face to face networking when I met a guy named Reb Stimson and Bob Zablack, and then Reb filled out my application. Bob gave me an application to my airline, and Reb hand walked my application into the chief pilot's office, put it on his desk, said, give this guy a shot. He walked it down to HR, put it on top of 25,000 applications, and I got a phone call like a month later.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
And you know what? It really, folks aren't doing you a favor when they do something like that. They're actually doing the company a favor because you're a known quantity to them, and they know that you're a long ball hitter. So why wade through 25,000, resumes of people who may be long ball hitters when you have a guy or gal that for a fact can get the job done and will move heaven and earth to make it happen. And that's the beauty of networking. Now, if you're a straight up bum, networking's not going to help you because just everybody's going to know you're a bum, right?
right, right.
so you got to actually be good at what you do. You can't be, you can't show up half stepping and, everybody else is hitting long balls. And every time you step up to the plate, you square up to bunt,
Oh,
when
they already heard your sonic boom from when your pack straps dropped halfway around the world, you know? Yeah. No, no, but the problem nowadays is that Mitch Bell probably would not have gotten that opportunity because HR has moved so far over into the computerized world.
yeah,
And we do need experts who can look through a resume because there are certain words that will trigger getting your resume pulled from the thousands.
sure.
It's well worth it. If there are companies out there that specialize in transitioning folks, it would be worth the money just to have them go over your resume, I think.
Absolutely. And it is frustrating. Fortunately, I've not dealt with the civilian world a great deal when it comes to positions. I believe I am firmly entrenched in the federal government. I do love it here. I enjoy what I do. And, I mainly enjoy the opportunity to get to continue to serve service members and their families because I do work in military housing. But I'll tell you, I think before I stand in line for a company, who's willing to reject me offhand because, for whatever reason, uh, I'll just go ahead and, move over into entrepreneurship because I will work twice as hard for myself as I would for them anyway, and I won't be making any money to start with, but I'd have my, I'd make it through my own HR. I promise you that. So, I'll tell you, I think that veterans would be wise to think about that, especially folks who are retiring. Because if you want to go the entrepreneurship route when you're retiring, you're already going to have a steady income stream. And, a lot of small businesses fail or they at least struggle in the first couple of years. So if you have that guaranteed revenue stream from your retirement, then you don't have to worry about being homeless or missing any meals.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, I know I'm not going to buy a controlling interest in the Texas Rangers anytime soon with my sergeant major retirement paycheck. But we're not going to be living out of a cardboard box either. So we're doing okay. We ain't walking in high cotton, but it's definitely knee high.
Walking in high
So
cut. Here's a picture of you sitting there on the beach, and if you guys go to LinkedIn, you can watch his video about living in Hawaii and living the Hawaii life and kind of the pros and cons about it, which I thought was a really good video.
yeah,
But you left
everybody,
out spam and eggs.
well, oh, now, well, see, people think here locally, people Hawaiians tend to think that spam is a Hawaii thing, and growing up in Kentucky, we always had spam because that was cheap
Yeah, we
ham.
did too.
When
Yeah.
the Piggly Wigglies had spam on sale, my mom would go down there and buy a big tin of it, and you'd eat it like a Christmas ham, and you'd eat it for every meal until you ran out. And I got here, and they acted like spam was a Hawaii thing. I just had to laugh. It's really, spam's kind of a poor person thing. I would say redneck, but I think poverty transcends all races and ethnicities, and it's that thing that binds us all together. And spam is a poor person thing. It's not a Hawaii thing or a Kentucky thing. So of course that's why I got big in Hawaii is because it was cheap, and we brought it over during the war, and it kind of spread
Right.
from there. But yeah, people ask me a lot. They say, "Oh, come on, living in Hawaii can't be that bad." When they hear me talk about moving, and no, Hawaii's amazing. It's a great place. It's people are just tremendous people, nicest people in the world. Very seldom will you ever hear anybody honk on the road because they think it's rude here. So
Yeah.
it's just people are by and large really nice. Very low violent crime here. Property crimes below the national average. Uh, the problem is what I highlighted in that video is just the cost of living is absolutely outrageous.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're paying for paradise, and the problem is, you know, uh, it's a tough place to retire for good unless you're independently wealthy. Then you can retire here. But if you're Charlie Wells, you're probably going to retire in East Tennessee or somewhere like that. You ain't going to retire in East Oahu. That's a fact.
Yeah. Probably. I mean, what is gas out there now? About $8 a gallon?
Well, I'll tell you what, I believe it'd be cheaper to run my car on beer than it would gas. That's how much gas is right now.
Oh my God. Yeah, I read something of that they can't even no rental cars. People are renting U-Hauls and living in the back of them and stuff, you know?
So
Oh,
I'll tell you, Taco, it's funny the way that we've chosen to respond to COVID, because here in Hawaii, I mean, we live on tourism. Tourism and the Department of Defense are the two biggest employers here. So when
right,
tourism kind of shut down for COVID, you had all these car rental places. And what they did is every single one of them took their entire inventory and parked it in the parking lot of Aloha Stadium. And I mean, the cars were literally door to door, bumper to bumper. It looked like a car lot, is what it looked like. And it
right.
was all the rental cars because they couldn't rent cars. So what must have happened is some of these rental car agencies must have shipped some of those cars off island, because now it seems like there is a shortage. So a lot of these apps sprung up, and I can't. The most popular one is eluding me, but basically you can rent your personal car to people that come to the island, and things like that are really gaining steam here, and people are
That's
renting.
crazy.
Yeah, it really is. It's nuts. So it's kind of the car equivalent of Airbnb, and people can go rent your vehicle. And we've got folks on the island going out and buying a third car just so they can rent it out all the time.
Jeez. Now,
Yeah.
you're over by K-Bay, right?
I used to live on K Bay. Now I'm over by Pearl Harbor. As a matter of fact, we live on something called Pearl City Peninsula, which is a military housing area, but it sticks out right in the middle of Pearl Harbor. So that's where we're at now.
Okay. Because I was gonna say much better, I thought, over on the other side of the island, kind of away from all the touristy stuff.
Yeah, it is. It is much nicer on the windward side. We call that the green side because it gets a lot more rain there, and
Yeah.
it's definitely, I think, my favorite part of the island. But there's something to be said for living over here in town too, because you're close to everything.
Sure. Sure. My buddy Scott Casey lived out there. He was an arty guy, and he was out there when they were filming Lost years ago.
Yeah,
And so they're driving by, they got these airplane pieces on the beach, and somebody's like, "Oh my God, an airplane crashed!" Before they knew what was going on, and then they were hanging out with all the stars at the local coffee houses and things like that. It was kind
yeah,
of mellow over there. Then the show
yeah.
took off, and
We do see a lot of it seems like almost every week they're shutting down something for a filming of Magnum PI, or used to be Hawaii 50 until they stopped filming that, and it's
right,
now it's NCIS Hawaii. So it is very common to see them filming somewhere, the camera crew, all the actors, everything. And it can be a little bit of an inconvenience. The first time you're enamored by it, and you're seeing actual Hollywood stuff, and then the second time
yeah,
when it's slowing traffic down, or you can't drive on the H3, you're like, curse you, Magnum. that's
yep,
that's that's the price of what they do. So
yeah. It was crazy too. Always be over there, and it was it seemed like I was back in Japan. I wasn't in Hawaii. I was in Japan. And
yeah,
then the last time I was through there, it was um,
yep,
the homeless parade. But that's gotten bad wherever there's a beach.
yeah.
San Diego, Santa Monica, California, Venice Beach, Los Angeles. So yeah, if you move back East Tennessee, Knoxville would be nice. Maryville would be nice. Cades
Yep.
Cove would be nice. Kentucky would be outstanding. I could see you in Justified. You could be in the new season of Justified. How about that?
So that's actually where I'm from.
No way. Oh, I love
Yeah,
Raylan Givens, man.
yeah, yeah. They, I watched Justified. I've watched it all the way through 2 or 3 times, and actually, only the pilot was filmed in Kentucky. Actually, it was filmed in a little bit of Kentucky and around Pittsburgh, and then
Oh,
every other episode was filmed in Southern California. So now as I go back and I rewatch the episodes, I didn't know that initially, but I now that I rewatch the episodes, I think, yeah, that does look like Southern California. That don't look like
yeah.
Kentucky.
Oh God. Yeah. Well, we'll get you in that when you get back to the states. So you're sitting out there. You're kind of like me. You get a lot of phone calls and a lot of texts, and you're always happy to help. What's your best story of helping somebody? What's your greatest success story? Greatest success story.
Well, I'll tell you my greatest success story, but it don't have to do with transition. It does have to do with helping somebody out, but it don't have anything to do with transition.
That's fine. Yeah,
Uh,
helping somebody out.
let's see, I served about 4 years in the infantry as a first sergeant,
Hmm.
and I did Iraq and Afghanistan with 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines.
Oh, nice.
And right before our Afghanistan deployment, I had a young man who was having some domestic violence issues with his wife, or some domestic. I don't want to say domestic violence. They were fussing a lot. There wasn't
Hmm.
any physical assault, but it was definitely a bad situation. And he had a new baby in the house, and I mean, we was heading out to Afghanistan, and that was in the early part of it when it was just, man, there's more fighting over there than a Karate Kid movie. So we knew it was going to be bad, and there's a lot of stress in his house. And he came up to me a week before deployment. And he said, First Sergeant, I was wondering if you could help me with something. And I said, what's that? He said, I was wondering if you could tell me how to be a better dad and a better husband. And I mean, man, I was floored by that. And I said, and he knew I had 3 kids and I'd been married for quite some time. And I said, nah, I said, don't believe I can do that. But I said, I can teach you. I said, I can take you to a book, can tell you all about it. And he said, I said, if you'd be interested, I'd love to do a Bible study with you.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
he said, absolutely, I'd like to. So we deployed to Afghanistan, and about 2 weeks after we got there, once we had done the relief in place with the unit that we relieved, which is actually a unit from Hawaii right here,
Uh-huh.
he and I started meeting in this little wooden shack that we used as a chow hall, and I mean, it really was a shack.
Where were y'all
And
located?
we were at a fob called Delaram, which was right on the ring route, or Route 1's what we called
Mhm.
it, one of the only paved roads in Afghanistan. Our fob was right on the side of it. And it was a pretty big fob by Afghanistan standards, but it was certainly no bastion. So,
Right. Right.
so he and I started meeting up in this little wooden shack every night at like 7 o'clock. I mean, every night. And I started in Genesis chapter 1, and we'd read about 3 or 4 chapters, and I'd stop every once in a while and explain context, what was happening in the chapter we were reading, and we would stop and talk about stuff. Well, that went on for 2 or 3 nights, and I didn't tell anybody about it because, I'm a first sergeant at the time, and I didn't want anybody to think I was trying to push my faith on, anybody
Sure.
else. I was just there to help. So about the third or fourth night, another kid showed up. And I thought it was weird because I hadn't told nobody about it.
Right.
And we went on for another 2 or 3 nights, and a third kid showed up. I thought, it's kind of weird. But we kept right on going. A few more nights later, a fourth kid showed up. And then, I mean, it just kept on and kept on and kept on. It started growing. And I mean,
Right.
it got to where we were having about 15 to 20 kids showing up every single night. I mean, and just deep, deep in this Bible study. And we did, let's see, I took them Genesis to Leviticus. Then we did one of the Gospels. I think it was Luke or John we read through. And then we did from Acts all the way through to Revelation. And about in the middle of that, the second kid that started coming, he said, "Hey, First Sergeant, can I talk to you after this?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "What's going on?" He said, "How do I become a Christian?" And I laughed, and I always tell this story because I grew up in church, and I mean, the only way I knew to become a Christian was, when the preacher's done with the message, you got to go up front and you got to tell him that you're ready to be a Christian. And, preacher will talk about it in front of everybody else. And then he'll ask a
Yeah.
few questions. And I said, man, I ain't never seen anybody get saved at a Bible study before. I don't But it was something. And I think about, and that was not Charlie, if you're a man of faith, it's the spirit that moves in people and causes them, to be drawn into stuff like that. And man, I just thought it was so neat. And that first kid, I would like to tell you that first young man is happily married now, and things are going well. But that's not true. That his marriage did not last.
Mhm.
It ended after deployment. And but you know, when I see the difference that it made in all of those other kids' lives, I think, man, that got out of hand quickly.
Yeah, it
And you
did.
know, one
We're
night, this funny. This could only happen in a Marine Bible study. Taco, we're sitting there one night. Now, at some point in time, it got we got kicked out of that wooden shack because we ended up tearing it down. So we moved it over to the chapel. You know, we had this old canvas tent that we used as a chapel. Looked
mhm.
like it was made during Vietnam, and somehow the Marine Corps still had it around. And we're in there one night doing Bible study, and a rocket hit the ECP, you know, the entry control point for the fob. And I mean, we were right next to it. So it hit boom. And I mean, you know, when an explosion's real close to you, you feel the overpressure and, you know, you feel it as soon as you hear it. And we didn't know where it hit. We just knew it was super close. Well, you know, the dust that was on the top of the tent and stuff just kind of
Yeah,
rained down on us because the
yeah.
explosion was so close. And there's one kid, he was reading and the explosion happened. He paused reading just a second, looked up and looked around. Nobody said nothing. He just went right back to reading. Nobody moved. So
Hey
I
man,
said,
you were protected by the faith,
man,
man. You had the bubble.
I
But
said, man, it's hard to break up a Marine Corps Bible study. I tell you that.
you know, the chaplain used to give me crap in Iraq all the time. I lived in the control tower at Al Taqaddum TQ, and the chaplain would come up and he'd go, "Hey, Taco, how come I never see you at church?" And I looked at him. I go, "Chaplain, do you know what IDF is? Do you know what indirect fire is?" And he goes, Yeah." I go, "Yeah, that means the chuckleheads are over there in Habbaniyah, or they were in Fallujah shooting rockets." I go, "Those guys have aimed the rockets. They don't know where they're going to go. They just set the charge on the battery, hit the timer, and they boogie out before retaliate and hit them with the counter battery." I said, "Do you know in the history of this base, there's only been one place that's been hit twice with a rocket? And guess where that is? Your chapel. So you tell me, what is the safest place on our base to be? Anywhere away from your place, because Allah has got the chapel dialed in, man. I'm telling you." Oh man, it was funny. I did go to Christmas. I did go to Christmas service for him. I knew we were going to
Well,
take a rocket, but I had to do it.
I mean, chaps should have told you that. You know, Paul said that to be apart from the body is to be with Christ. You know, to die is gain.
Well, I didn't think it was my time to go yet. Not with a chucklehead throwing a rocket. They just seemed to have that place dialed in. Everywhere else,
Yeah.
they went all over the place, but the chapel got hit twice. Lightning never hits twice, even. Oh my God, that's funny. Um, what would you recommend for folks getting out of the Marine Corps now? Life is kind of calmed down. We're not doing as many deployments. Well, I say that prematurely. I think we could probably start sending guys to the Ukraine, but you know, what's your recommendation for guys getting out of the services?
Well, well, I'll tell you, Taco. I was always a pretty big hit with young Marines because I told the unabashed truth about stuff. Because I figured out a long time ago the best way to talk people into things is to be honest. And when you're authentic with folks, they know that you're shooting them straight. So here would be my advice to people. You know, the Department of Defense changed the military retirement paradigm back in 2018,
Hmm.
and they standardized it to look more like a Fortune 500 retirement where they do money matching and a 401k or what we call the TSP, you know, the Thrift Savings Program. So when I first joined the Marine Corps, my dad told me before I even went to boot camp, he said, "Hey boy, you need to stay 20 years because if you stay for 20, you get 50% of your pay for the rest of your life."
Hmm.
So the
And
military
medical.
was and medical. And so, you know, the military was a winning proposition. You don't get that anymore. And my advice to young people joining up now would be to do 4 years and get out. Um, and the reason is this: the military is an amazing, amazing opportunity, absolutely unsurpassed opportunity for young people just getting out of high school or even just getting out of college. I tried to talk my oldest kid into going into the Air Force. Um, so the military is still a great opportunity to get you started in life, but it is no longer a great opportunity to spend 26 years in the military because you're going to leave with the same retirement that you would have left Amazon with. So
Mm-hmm.
you really have to think about what your goals are in life. Now, don't get me wrong. There are still going to be young people that enlist today that do 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, maybe their goals align with 30 years in the military, but it's no longer financially, sound to stay in the military for that long because, the retirement system has changed so dramatically. So what I would suggest is that you really take a look at what your goals are in life and let those guide your decision on whether you stay in or get out. But
Mm-hmm.
there's not a lot of benefits to doing that 20 years anymore. Now, if you want to get out at 12, you want to get out at 8, you want to get out at 4. If you get out at 4, you have to make sure that you get out with a an airtight occupation. So that could mean you have all of your HVAC training done and you've started an apprenticeship program with somebody and you're ready to step into that. Or you're a plumber or an electrician and you're ready to start your apprenticeship right away. Or maybe you've, leveraged your tuition assistance or your GI Bill and you're ready to either start college or you've just finished college. But never, ever, ever get out of the military unless you have an ironclad, airtight occupation that you're ready to go into. And you know, our generation of folks that retired from the military didn't always have that. And especially, from my tribe, the senior enlisted folks, a lot of them try to hang around till 30 because they still don't know what they want to do when they grow up. And there's not a lot of there's not a lot of job openings for basic leader. So
Right.
it's really tough. Those guys and gals have a really hard time of defining what they're going to be like away from the military. And, they have an identity crisis. So if you're retiring and you're watching this, then start 2 or 3 years out or 4 or 5 years out and really drill down on exactly what you're going to do after the military and start working on it, 3 to 5 years out, whether it's, if you're going into a trade, fine, get all your education and start an apprenticeship program, in your off hours. And everybody tries to martyr themselves on the op schedule of, the military and say, well, I just don't have time. Oh, you have time.
Oh
What
yeah,
you
you
don't
got
have
it.
is you just don't have the inclination. I had more time in the military than I've ever had, with the exception of, when I was with the infantry and we were deploying, and we had a very short dwell time. But
Right.
out of the 26 years that I served, that was just a fairly brief period. That was 4 of 26 years. So chances are you have time. What you lack is the inclination. So I would encourage those folks retiring to go ahead and dig down deep inside and muster up that inclination and start figuring out what that second hustle is because you're going to need one. And too many
Right.
people just say, oh, I'll be all right. I'll figure it out. Yeah, you'll be all right. You'll be all right. But, being all right, that's a 1999 Ford Tempo. I want to be doing real well. I want to be doing brand new Toyota Tundra well. I don't want to be, I don't want to
Right.
be
Right.
1998 Ford Tempo good.
I want the
So,
house. I want the house up in the mountains. I want to go to my hunting cabin up in Montana. I want to
yeah,
drive tanks.
I don't want the single wide that somebody hauled up in the holler. I want a house on a hill. Yeah,
I want the
absolutely.
double wide with cathedral ceilings. God, man, come on, step it up, step your game up.
That's right. So, that's for the retired folks. Now, for the folks that are just transitioning out, man, that's the hardest endeavor. Just transitioning out of the military with no retirement. Eek, that's
Yeah.
like learning how to walk a trapeze without ever using a safety net. Or working a trapeze or a high wire without no safety net. Like first time you ever step on the high wire, you don't have a net. Boy, that's scary. So for those folks, they need to be even more dialed in. So, when I used to talk to young Marines about getting out, I would say, hey, what are you going to do when you grow up? And I promise you, 85, 90% of them would say, I want to be a state trooper. And I used to tell them, I'd say, well, that's great. But if every one of you knuckleheads became state troopers, we'd have to admit 5 new states into the union to have enough states to require that many state troopers.
Right.
So let's roll to the backup. Let's go to Plan B and see what you got there. And that was really their only, that was the only thing they thought about. Oh, I'm going to be a state trooper.
Wonder why that is. I
And
mean, just because you handle guns and
I mean, I
it's
think
kind of the closest thing to the military.
the sense of authority over other people that you still have as a cop, I think, goes a long way. I think that resonates with a lot of Marines anyway. A lot of alpha males and females. I think that resonates with them. But when you really get down to it and start talking to them, boy, that was their only plan. And like one of my favorite movies, one of the lines is, I'd like to be pimps from Oakland or cowboys from Arizona, but this ain't Halloween. So, yeah, there's lots of things that you want to be when you grow up. But now let's be realistic. I think the worst thing we ever told anybody is that you can be whatever you want to be. That's not true. I'll never play an NBA. I'll never be a mathematician working for NASA either. So you can't be anything you want to be. You can be what you want to be within reason. So let's figure out what those left and right lateral limits are, figure out what you're talented in and gifted in and where your passion lies. And then let's shoot for something within those left and right lateral limits. Saying I want to be a state trooper, you weren't even a good Lance Corporal. How are you going to be a state trooper? I couldn't trust you to go to the armory by yourself. How can I trust you to carry a loaded weapon and pull over, smart mouth punks on the side of I-75 without getting yourself in trouble? Can't do it.
Right.
So, yeah, young people, they really have to be even more dialed in than retirees do because they have, an even smaller margin of error. Now, the good news is I see a lot of, people that just transition out of the military without retirement do very, very well because in a lot of cases, they're still young enough to where they don't have a family in tow. When I transitioned out, my wife told me, and we've got three kids, 2 are college age, and 1 is knocking on the door. And she told me, she said, "Hey, me and the kids want to stay here on Oahu for a couple more years." And I said, "Babe, you know what it costs to live on Oahu?" She said, "Hey, we followed you around for 20 years. Now it's time for you to follow us around once." And I mean, how can you argue that logic? So
happy wife, happy life.
That's right. So I knew we were going to be operating on a razor thin margin. And I knew that I had to make at least this much money to be able to support our family here on Oahu. So, boy, I had to aim small and miss small on that one. It was a tough target. So it was even more imperative that I figure out what I wanted to do, that I network, that I had all this stuff in line. And I'll tell you, it really worked out. There were 2 keys to that. Certainly networking was number 1, and number 2 was having a good nest egg, having some liquidity, so if you needed cash you had cash there. And there's a lot of unforeseen expenses in transition, so it's important to have that.
It's amazing. They say how many people don't even have $500 in their bank account to cover an emergency with the car or whatever. So yeah, definitely if what is the guy's name? He does the financial piece. We did it through our church.
Of course, now I can't remember the guy's name.
Yeah, very Christian. He does. We had that financial peace university in our church, and so
he's
my
the
wife,
financial guy.
Yeah, Dave Ramsey.
So
we went to Dave Ramsey's course because I thought, once again, let's do a gut check. If we have to be on our own, what do we need to tighten up? What do we need to do to be able to, my wife and I have lived within our means in terms of the only time I ever got in debt was when my britches got too big and I bought a Porsche 928 S4 because I always wanted one, risky business. Who's the U-boat commander? I always wanted one. So I got one. And that dang thing, man, I put $6,000 on the credit card. And that was the first time I was in debt. But the problem was I was on probation making $18,000. And I wasn't making the $55,000 I was making as a captain in the Marines. So I went into debt and I was paying off, just a little bit until I finally could make more money. But that put me behind the 8 ball for about a year. And I never did that again. But so we went to that thing. And then there were about 20 couples in this course. And if you ever done this, they go, okay, write down on a notepad how much money you have in savings that you can actually physically take if you needed it tomorrow. And so we wrote down how much we had, and everyone wrote down, they collected it, and they go, oh, congratulations. You know, we've got $25,000 here between all these couples. And I looked at my wife and I'm going, holy crap, 20,000 of that is ours. That's there are people that are in worse shape than we are. So I think
Yeah.
gut check, we're doing okay. But I always tell guys, here's the little known favor secret that nobody talks about when you're getting out on the officer side. And I'm not sure about the enlisted, and you might be able to address that as well. But when I got out, I'm in S1, and it was a warrant officer and I think a corporal, and I'm signing my DD 214. That was the day I got the phone call. Hi, we'd like to offer you a job at American, blah blah blah. And so I'm signing my DD 214, and the warrant officer says, "Hey, would you like to keep your commission?" Uh, I don't know. What does that mean? He goes, well, you either resign your commission or you keep your commission. You just have to put down X what you want. Well, resigning my commission sounded like, hey, we got that commission back, and you were captain. I just thought, oh, I'll keep my commission. So I kept the commission, but nobody told me that you have to have sat years in the reserves. And so I went through, and I stayed in, I did coloring books and stuff like that, and I got back in the reserves. But nobody ever told me that you only have so many years under Title 10 to retire. So the guys that make it to major and go, oh, yeah, I made it to major, woohoo, I can retire. No, you have to have 20 sat years to retire as a major, 28 as a lieutenant colonel, and I guess 32 as a colonel, and how many as a general. But I had a major that worked for me, and all of a sudden he sends me this frantic email, and he goes, Sir, I'm getting screwed. Oh my God. I'm like, what's the matter? And he goes, I just got this message from headquarters. It says, hey, thank you very much. You've hit 20 years. You only have 18 sat years, but you have 20 commission years. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200. You're out of here.
Oof.
And that was trying to get a waiver for that. They basically looked at his package and said, as a reservist, you have not deployed. This war's been going on for 8 years and you haven't bothered to deploy. So, denied. And you're going,
Yeah.
that if I had known that back then, I would have mentored guys, which I do now. I tell them, hey, if you get out and you have 10 years, you could do 10 years in prison standing on your head. Get the 10 years done. Before you know it, you'll be retired out of the reserves, guard, whatever. And then when you hit 60, you'll get TRICARE and get your paycheck.
Yeah.
So I tell guys, whatever you do, don't have unsat years. So depending on when your anniversary is, when you get out, stay in the reserves and continue fighting the fight until you can get out. Now, if guys are getting out because of the deployment cycles and whatnot, and the reserves might send them out as well, you got to do what you got to do, take care of the family. But I hate to throw that 10 years of active service away in terms of going for retirement.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it kind of depends on what branch you're in. It seemed to me, especially in Iraq, the different branches treated their reserves a bit differently. The Marine Corps called up their reserves very quickly in Iraq. So you were just about as likely to retire to deploy as a reservist as you were active duty. So, when I would talk to Marines getting out of the Marine Corps, I would always talk to them about the reserves, and I would say, "Hey, just so it's if you're a Marine reservist, you're not going to be a weekend warrior. You're liable to be a full time warrior if we got to go somewhere else, and kick somebody else's sandbox over. So, be advised." And that happened with the Marine Corps a lot. I think the Army waited just a little bit longer to trigger the reserves until they'd been over in Iraq for a while, and they started needing some relief. I'm not sure about the Air Force and the Navy, how they work it, but I definitely think you need to take a look around at your branch and figure out how they employ the reserves and, decide for yourself if it's worth worth it for you to stick around. And I know my uncle, he retired out of the Army Reserves. And I mean, heck, he came in during Vietnam and he was a reservist until he was, goodness gracious, he was way up in his 50s when he retired from the reserves.
Sure.
So you can do an entire career in it, but you have to be willing to be called away at a moment's notice. And he was self-employed, so that was kind of tough on him sometimes, getting called away for things. But you really do have to, be discerning about whether that's the right move for you. Same with the active reserves. The active reserves get employed much like active duty folks do. So there are a lot of options out there for folks that are transitioning to keep you in the military, to keep you around the military. The real question you need to ask yourself is, should I take that step? And if so, why? What's my return on investment for continuing on with this, especially now, like I mentioned with the new retirement paradigm, for the folks who enlist after 2018, is it really worth it to stay in that long, and to continue to serve? Now, don't get me wrong. I love, young men and women that serve the nation and the greater good. And I believe that, heck, if Charlie Wells was emperor, he would make it mandatory. But of course, then it wouldn't be service, right? If it's obligated, it's not special if you have to do it. But yeah, I think these folks, they really have to make a different decision than what you and I did, because it's financially, it's a very different picture for them than it was for us. So, we all knew exactly what we were going to get when we retired at a certain point. And these young folks coming up today do not. So, yeah, it's tough, but I guess each one is going to walk their own path, and they got to figure out what that looks like.
Yeah, true. Well, let's see. I've got a couple comments here. Garrett Sager. How is it that we know all the same people? You know Garrett?
Well, I do. I'm connected with him, but I don't know if he's asking that to you or to me.
Megan Cruz, good evening, Taco. Hey, Megan, how are you? And JC Ortiz, Wild Taco TQ. Have not heard that in a long time. Yeah, 03. So I was there in 05 to 06 with Second Ma, and that was right there in between Fallujah and Ramadi. That was a good time. Where were you all located? Sorry, Megan.
So I was the first time I did Iraq, I stayed in Kuwait. That was for the invasion. The second time I went, I was in a little town. Well, I moved all around the second time. I started off just outside of Al Assad in a place called Baghdadi. It was right on the river. And then I moved up to Haditha and actually lived inside Haditha Dam for about 2 months. And then, yeah.
Were you up there when they had the Haditha incident,
I was not. We actually got up there in 2008. So when we got up there, it was very quiet, a lot of partnership going on, it was a pretty safe place as Iraq went. The thing about Iraqis is that they're kind of, I don't know if I'd call them a first world country, but they're first world adjacent. They know what cable TV is. So it's easy to convince them that there's, prosperity coming down the road. So it's easier to talk them into putting their weapons down. Afghans aren't even third world adjacent. They're fourth world. I mean, they're just absolute, backwards. So it was a lot tougher with them. So Iraq, for us, all the hard work had been done in 05 and 06, when the plus up happened. So by 2008, it was fairly quiet. It was interesting getting to work side by side with Iraqis that had previously been insurgents and would tell you that freely, that they had been insurgents during, 2004 and 2005. Very odd. But in Afghanistan, we were in Delaram, and like I said, man, it was a bunch of fighting there. Different people. And, Afghans would always be quick to tell you that they were different too. They would always tell you that they weren't Arabs. They were very, very emphatic on that point.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey, Ricky, you're right. Dave Ramsey, I appreciate you jumping in there for me. Well, Charlie, I always ask this, what is your favorite book besides the Bible? What is, like, with the old breed is my go-to? what is your favorite military? And it could be World War II, Korea, or Vietnam.
So I'll tell you. Well, now see, you took my favorite book off the list when you said that. But if I was going to go from those three periods, I would have to go with a book about Korea called Breakout, and it's about the breakout from the Chosin Reservoir. I have
Right.
always been a fan of the Blue Diamond. I've always
Uh-huh.
been a big First Marine Division guy, and just an amazing account. It's a narrative of what it was like for the Marines around the Chosen. Just man, such an amazing account. But now I'll tell you, and you always remind me of this when I see your name. There's a really good book about World War II called A Marine Named Mitch, and it's about Mitchell Page.
Oh,
And
I never heard of that. I've never heard that
yeah,
one.
it's a really neat book. And of course, he was also with the First Marine Division. He was a machine gunner, and
Uh-huh.
he actually figured out how to get the old 30 caliber machine guns to fire like 200 rounds a minute quicker. He figured out a modification for them, and yeah, he's just really, really crafty young warfighter, and you see his whole experience, through the Pacific. Just a really neat book. That's probably one of my favorite World War II books. But I do have quite a few World War II books that I do really enjoy. I think anything by Sledge, he's got a couple of good ones out there that I really enjoyed. But yeah, I don't know. Vietnam's another tough one because there's so many good books out there. I'll tell you, there's a really good book, and it's not action packed about the Marines, but it's called "How We Lost the Vietnam War." And the guy that wrote it was at one time he held political office. He was the commander of South Vietnam's air forces.
Oh,
Really
wow.
interesting account of why we lost, despite having advantages in everything over the North Vietnamese. And it's a really good perspective to look at. And it kind of, if you read it, it kind of tells you why today you should never set any ground troops in a place like Ukraine,
Yeah.
because no matter what happens, you're going to lose the second you put ground forces in, because now it becomes a political issue, and the American public get to weigh in on whether you stay or go. So
Right.
really, really interesting book. But yeah, I'll tell you, I'm a big reader. I love reading, history. My son actually loves it too. So my 17-year-old, so he loves reading books like that. And every once in a while, we still get to meet somebody who who you first read about in a book, and that's always just tremendous.
Give me give me tomorrow. I just had to look up on my shelf. So within our group at DFW, we have Lieutenant General Richard Kerry, who was a first lieutenant at the Chosen, and he got the Silver
Wow.
Star. And so when they put the call out, I think he was in the tent. They put the call out. Every man the perimeter. He grabbed all right, all the cooks and typists and everything. You guys come with me, and he grabbed cases of hand grenades, and he is just sitting there, and he was like pulling the pin. He's going, hut, 2, 3, huh. But over the howl of the wind and the din of everything, they thought he was cursing at them in Korean, and they were all, ha! They thought that was a cursing. But he was sitting there chucking hand grenades at the North Koreans as they were coming over the perimeter there in Chosin, and or was it Punsan? No, it was Chosin. So yeah, check out Give Me Tomorrow. He's still alive. He's in our group, and if you have any interest, I'll get that book and have him autograph it for you since
Oh,
he's
that's neat.
still around. What a great guy! But
Yeah,
yeah, I
that's
love. I'm a vivacious reader. I like reading a lot, and one of the benefits of doing the podcast is that you meet a lot of different people who have written books, which I'm always amazed and
yeah.
enamored that somebody could take the time to sit and put pen to paper to thoughts and do it right, because I can't spell then and than. I screw that up half the time. But yeah, it's really neat. Chicken Hawk, I had him on. Bob Mason, who wrote Chicken Hawk, a helicopter book back in Vietnam, and different people. So it was a good time and really enjoyed it. Most of the other books that somebody will send me a book or I'll buy their book and read it and then have them on the show. It's kind of fun. Definitely enjoy that. So tell your son in LinkedIn, who is the most interesting person you've met through LinkedIn?
Man, it's hard to say because you're always connecting with CEOs. Everybody on LinkedIn is a CEO or a COO, it seems like. Um, I don't know that I've met anybody that interesting on LinkedIn. I will say that I met he's the chief of staff for PACAF over here at Hickam.
Mhm.
And I mean, we connected, nobody puts their rank on LinkedIn. And when he connected, he said, "Hey, I'm here local, would you like to go get some coffee?" And I said, "Absolutely." And I looked at his profile and it said Chief of Staff PACAF. And I'm not real familiar with how the Air Force is laid out, but I thought, PACAF, this guy might be a 1-star. And yeah, I looked him up and he was a 1-star. Of course, I mean, when you're a sergeant major for, almost 3 decades, you know a lot of 1-stars, and
Yeah.
2-stars and stuff. But I mean, that was still interesting because he was here local. I don't know that I've met a lot of good dudes on LinkedIn. How's that? I've met a lot of really interesting folks.
Yeah.
So
I'll go with that.
I should say that I've met a lot of great people on LinkedIn who all have an interesting story. So I guess that's a better way of putting it. Have I met anybody famous on LinkedIn? No, not that I know of anyway.
Met somebody interesting. You've met
Yeah,
lots of interesting people.
yeah, lots of interesting people, and I'll tell you that is the thing about networking. Though the more that you network, the more really interesting people you start to meet, and really, to me, everybody has a story, and everybody is interesting. It's just sometimes that story lies beneath the surface, so you have to get to know them. So
Right.
I'm a people person, and I just love hearing people's stories. Some people's stories just closer to the surface, so it's easier to see. If you spent 15 minutes with Tom Cruise, you probably think he was the most boring nut job you've ever met in your life, and you wouldn't want to have anything to do with him. It's just that he's good at acting.
Yeah.
Then again, you meet somebody else, that just an amazing person that you've never heard of ever before. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I tell
yeah.
you
So
what, I put your LinkedIn stuff down here. And if you guys are on LinkedIn, I highly recommend going and following the Sergeant Major. Get Charlie's videos and watch them. You'll laugh. You're really good at solo talks. I love it. And your justified voice is Raylan Givens. I got to tell you, man, you are good and smooth. I like listening
why
to you, Charlie.
why Raylan Givens? Every time I hear Walt Goggins do that, I laugh. He does that. He does that Appalachian accent real well.
Oh, he's my favorite actor. I mean, he's got to be from there. I watched him on the cop show. Oh God, man, now I'm dating myself. Vic and the strike team, The Shield. That was a great show.
Was
So,
he on that?
oh yeah, he was on
I
that.
don't know if I ever watched The Shield.
Yeah, he's got the same accent, so he must be from out there somewhere. But
He's
anyway,
actually from. I looked it up. He's actually from Alabama, I think, is where he's from.
oh, is he?
But yeah, he comes by it honestly.
Yeah, he's got a great accent. Well, you guys will love sitting there listening to Charlie's videos and his words of wisdom. Charlie, if you hang out for a minute, I'll be right back with you. We'll wrap this up. Anything else you want to pass on? Words of wisdom?
You know what? If you ever need help, or if you just want to talk about transition of the world, you just DM me and I'll shoot you my phone number because I got plenty of time to make a difference for you.
You're the man. Hold on one second, all right? Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that. We're going to wrap it up here, and can't thank Charlie Wells for spending the time with me in beautiful Honolulu. It's now 5 p.m. out there. His wife is sending him a little text going, "Hey, it's Chow. Chow is morale." So he is heading in for dinner soon. Can't thank him enough for joining us. See you guys next week. I'm going to have it'll be an interesting Tuesday night. So come back, join us Tuesday night, 7 p.m. next week. And until then, adios, hasta luego, auf Wiedersehen. Tschüss, shesheni, au revoir, domo arigato gozaimasu, tano shinde, kudasai, ciao. arrivederci, nas destroya, das vidanya, and adios hasta luego, and we'll have fun. You guys take care and look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye now.